This is who murdered Teresa, Donald Douglas. He was 33 at the time of the murder. He's dead. He died of natural causes when he was 54 years old. He and his brother owned D&D Electric.
Teresa Lee Scalf was born on June the 13th, 1957. She was a single mother, a dedicated registered nurse, and a loving daughter and sister. At the age of 29, Teresa lived with her 8-year-old son in Polk County, Florida. She had just obtained her registered nurse license. After that, she was hired at Lakeland Regional Health Medical Center. On October 27th, 1986, the weeks before the horrifying day, Teresa mentioned something to her sister. She talked about a male neighbor who gave her an unsettling feeling. He made her feel so uncomfortable. She couldn't quite describe him, but she stressed that he lived right behind her house and had once shown up at her house with a flower he had ripped up out of the ground and put in a pot. Before we delve further into this real-life crime story, we kindly ask you to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts with us in the comments. On October 27th, 1986, Teresa's son was away from home and tragedy descended upon their lives. Someone entered her house, horribly assaulted her, and brutally stabbed her to a tragic end. Teresa Scalf's mother, Betty Scalf, had received the heart-wrenching news on that day in 1986. She had received a call saying her daughter hadn't shown up for work. Betty's motherly instinct drove her to the duplex, where she used a credit card to open the locked door. What she found inside was a scene of pure horror. When the crime scene was discovered, it was a horrifying scene of unimaginable brutality, one that the investigators who witnessed it would never forget. The extent of the brutality that had transpired inside those walls created a lasting impression on their collective consciousness. The discovery of unidentified blood was one of the horrifying results. It served as a haunting reminder of the brutal killer's presence and the severity of the heinous actions carried out. Teresa's life was cruelly and unexpectedly taken from her by this cruel attacker. Her sudden passing shocked her family and the entire community, leaving them to deal with an unbelievable tragedy that would change their lives forever. The investigation had been marked by the collection of DNA evidence at the crime scene. Teresa had fought back against her attacker, leaving behind vital evidence. This evidence, however, had remained untraceable for many years. It was only when technology advanced that the DNA was entered into the FBI's national database in the early 2000s. Throughout the course of the investigation, DNA was analysed from the available forensic evidence, and the STR profile was developed and entered into the combined DNA index system, CODIS, a consortium of local, state and national databases of DNA profiles from convicted offenders, unsolved crime scene evidence and missing persons. There were no matches detected in the CODIS search, and despite investigators' extensive efforts and thousands of man-hours, the identity of Miss Scalf's murderer went undetermined for more than 3 decades. But after 37 long years, in 2022, there appeared a ray of hope. The Polk County Sheriff's Office teamed up with Othram, a company that's really good at using advanced DNA testing. Together, they started digging back into the old case. The breakthrough moment arrived when they looked at the mystery DNA they found at the crime scene at the time of Teresa's murder investigation. Othram's expert team of genealogy detectives started working with the DNA profile. They went on a tough journey, searching through genetic databases to find a possible family member of the mystery suspect. Think of it like solving a dark puzzle, piece by piece, to reveal the identity of the wrongdoer. When the detectives spoke with the relatives, everything started to make sense in a really eerie manner. After suspecting her neighbour, Douglas, as the murderer, they started looking for him. But they soon found out that Douglas was no longer alive. Sheriff's investigators then contacted his son and asked for a DNA sample. Douglas had actually lived right behind Teresa Scalf. It was a horrific revelation, showing that the truth was much closer to home than anyone could have ever guessed. Douglas's son, driven by a sense of responsibility and a desire for closure, willingly provided a DNA sample to the authorities in the hopes of resolving the long-standing mystery surrounding Teresa's murder. Through advanced forensic analysis and DNA testing, the investigators were able to definitively confirm that his father was indeed the perpetrator, shedding light on a tragic event that had remained unsolved for many years. He would have been 33 years old when Teresa was murdered, and he passed away in 2008 from natural causes at the age of 54. What made it even harder to bear was the revelation that detectives had actually talked to Donald Douglas back in 1986, but at the time there wasn't any proof connecting him to the horrifying murder. The heavy rain on the day of the murder had washed away vital evidence, making it even more challenging to solve the case. It appeared that the person responsible had somehow slipped through the fingers of justice for all those years, and the case went cold. Detective Matthew Newbold, who had taken over the case in 2015, described the gruesome discovery. He said Teresa Scalf had been brutally stabbed and repeatedly attacked. It was a scene that no one should ever have to witness, especially a mother finding her daughter in such a horrifying state. Sheriff Grady Judd had a theory about why Douglas might have killed Teresa. He thought that maybe Douglas wanted a romantic relationship with her, but she had turned him down. This could have been what drove him to commit this terrible act, fueled by obsession and anger. Teresa's family had only heard her mention a creepy neighbour in passing, never realising just how deep his obsessions were on her. Thankfully, Teresa's mother, Betty Scalf, who was now 84 years old, was still alive to see her daughter's murder solved. The burden of not knowing was finally lifted, but the pain endured.
Once he found out that we were able to work a genealogy on the DNA, had to trace this case back to 1949, when a third cousin to Donald Douglas had an affair and had a child not by her husband.
Each October, the Scalf family had to endure the painful anniversary of Teresa's murder, not knowing who had taken their beloved daughter, sister, and mother. Now they could finally put a name to the face of the monster who had haunted them for so long. As Teresa's sister, Pam Shade, stood before the gathered crowd, she shared the family's emotions. Relief and closure were mixed with a deep sense of loss. She remembered Teresa as a loving, wonderful person who had achieved her dream of becoming a registered nurse.
The first thing that I would like to say is Teresa was a wonderful person, the most loving person. She didn't deserve this. Our family didn't deserve this.
The words on Teresa's car bumper will always be remembered. Don't take your organs to heaven. Heaven knows we need them here.